Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Nate Dogg. We'll be going over the Chaos Gods of the Warhammer 40k franchise.
Okay, so first things first, a bit of world setup. For those unfamiliar, Warhammer 40k is a sci-fi world that was originally created for a tabletop wargame, and has since gone on to include role-playing games, video games, novels, etc. Originally set in the 40th millennium, hence the 40k or 40,000 of the game's name, successive iterations of the game have brought the Warhammer 40k series to the end of the 41st millennium. The 40k world is set in a dark imagining of the future that combines sci-fi and fantasy elements, taking place almost entirely within the Milky Way galaxy. An important aspect of the 40k verse to understand for this video is the existence of the Immaterium, more often and hereafter referred to as the Warp. The Warp is a separate dimension of reality that exists adjacent to what is known in-universe as real space, which is simply our world as we know it today, complete with all of the rules of physics and such that we're familiar with. The Warp, on the other hand, is a realm of pure psychic energy. Almost all supernatural effects in the 40k games are generated using psychic energy drawn from the Warp. Symbiotically, the Warp is seemingly maintained by the collective unconscious wills of all living things in the universe. It is said that in the far distant beginnings of time, that the Warp was like a calm river, flowing and ebbing with the wills and whims of life in real space. But as time passed, populations grew, and wars were raged all across reality, the Warp became more and more chaotic, churning like an ocean in a storm in the game's modern day, rather than the placid river it had supposedly once been.
In the 40k verse, the concept of the living soul is very much tied up within the Warp. The very ability of psionic beings, called psykers, to reach into the Warp and manipulate real space is based upon the idea that the Warp is essentially pure thought, emotion, will, all of those things that most of us consider to be that spark of life that makes up the living soul. Resultantly, the Warp is also looked upon by some as the ephemeral afterlife of the 40k verse. While a Psyker's powers can have amazing effects, these very powers come with dangers similar to those faced by the mages in the Dragon Age games. See our video on how Dragon Age magic works here. In that, much like a Dragon Age mage is vulnerable to demonic possession, Psykers in 40k are both subject to possession by malevolent entities residing within the Warp, as well as being physically turned into short-lived portals connecting to the Warp itself by such malevolent creatures, allowing beings and energies from the Warp to enter real space and wreak havoc on reality. In addition to being a maelstrom of raw emotion and home to predominantly unfriendly creatures, the Warp has gained its most common name by also being the space that allows most factions in the 40k games access to FTL travel. As previously mentioned, the known 40k world spans most of the Milky Way galaxy, and societies would be unable to maintain interstellar stability without some form of FTL travel. While the exactitudes of how different factions handle FTL differ, all of them involve breaching into the realm of the Warp, or a space adjacent to it, traveling through the roiling ocean of raw emotions, much like a submarine in a real ocean for a time, before popping back into real space, hopefully closer to their destination than when they started, warping. Though it's not unheard of for a ship to be thrown wildly off course by particularly strong currents, we do keep making these stormy ocean comparisons for a reason.
Given enough time and a large enough scale of input from life in real space, sometimes particular thoughts, aspects, and emotions can coalesce and gain power. Given more time and more emotional fuel, and those gatherings can gain sentience, becoming living, thinking creatures of pure emotionally flavored psychic energies. The greatest and most powerful of these creatures have come to be known as the Chaos Gods, beings formed from the psychic energy of millennia of galaxies worth of living beings breathing, fighting, hating, and indulging. While many powerful psychic entities exist within the Warp, the Chaos Gods are the most powerful. They are also the absolute enemy of all other factions in the game, minus those who choose to serve the Chaos Gods directly. It should be noted that, with rare exception, the mortal forces of the 40k verse do not generally ally together against the forces of chaos, but they do all individually recognize the danger posed by the Chaos Gods and their forces, each faction seeing the Chaos Gods as a major threat, though not necessarily something worth banding together to fight against.
There are 4 Chaos Gods: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, each embodying one or more concepts or emotions taken to a negative excess. The Chaos Gods live and rule over sections of the Warp itself and spend most of their time battling each other for dominance, each seeking to utterly destroy the other 3 and gain uncontested rule of the Warp, and resultantly, likely, real space thereafter. They are incredibly self-serving, seeking only to fuel the growth of their own power by either turning mortals to their cause, and thus fueling them with whatever thoughts, actions, and emotions the various gods thrive upon, or weakening and destroying their rival gods. Whole regions of influence are created by their will and populated by demons formed from their own power at their whim and reabsorbed just as easily, all working in constant opposition to one another. The Chaos Gods work together in only one of two instances. First, and most often, when one of them gains enough power over the other three that the then lesser gods fear destruction, at which point they will band together to beat the most powerful one down. But these alliances last exactly until the moment that one of them thinks they have the chance to gain the upper hand, and then it's a free-for-all once more. The second instance is when either some threat to their continued chaotic ways arises, or when an opportunity to spread their chaos arises.
Khorne is usually portrayed as the most powerful of the Chaos Gods, and for good reason. In a setting originally designed for war games, Khorne is the god of blood, war, and murder. He is fueled by simple hate and anger, and is empowered by war and the acts of murder and battle. Khorne is violence and bloodshed personified. He seeks war for the sake of war, battle for the sake of battle, etc., etc. In a very real sense, he, like all three of his rivals, is an aspect of chaos incarnate. His followers and demons encourage and pursue straightforward combat, both with mortals and other chaos gods, and even each other. For there is a saying, "Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, just that it flows." If he had his way, all of reality would be filled with perpetual war. Though, ironically, such a reality would eventually lead to everything dying out, and then, if we understand the warp correctly, Khorne would eventually wither away, with no wars or bloodshed left to sustain him.
It should also be noted that while Khorne enjoys war and bloodshed, he does not advocate the prolonged suffering of those in battle, as such suffering doesn't empower him, but rather one of his rivals, Nurgle. Instead, Khorne goes for the efficient kill, preferring his followers seek out greater challenges worthy of their time rather than waste energy in maiming their foes. While all the Chaos Gods are formed of raw, psychic energy, mortal minds necessitate imagery, and both Chaos Gods and their servant demons are capable of assuming physical forms. Thus, Khorne most often assumes the form of a massive armored warrior, seen sitting upon a brass throne atop a literal mountain of skulls that some claim come from those crushed by his warriors, others say represent his fallen champions, while still others say they are both. Whatever their source, the mountain grows steadily larger over the passage of time.
Now let's discuss Tzeentch. Tzeentch is the god of fate, plot, and schemes. He feeds upon ambition, change, and the search for knowledge and power. As psychic power is the essence of the warp, and through psychers, the most powerful single agent of change and mutability, Tzeentch favors collecting psychers to his cause, along with the cunning and tenacious. He weaves plots within plots within plots, many taking millennia to come to fruition, or involving things that seemingly go against his own interests. He is scheme incarnate, and rather than plan and plot for some specific goal, he schemes merely to scheme. True, he plots the downfall of his rival gods, but even were he to succeed, he would continue to weave intrigue, for that is his nature. That is what he feeds upon, weaving mortal, demon, and chaos god alike into his plans. Of the four gods, Tzeentch is the least likely to assume a constant form when encountered. Some accounts depict him as a lanky being with spindly extremities and a head sunken into his chest, with a constantly shifting host of faces appearing, fading, and reappearing all over his body that whisper variations or even contradictions of the words spoken by his primary face. Other depictions range from bastardized birds and fish to living smoke or even glowing floating runes.
Next up, we have the infinitely easier to pronounce Nurgle. Nurgle is the god of decay, death, and destruction. He feeds upon despair, fear, and death, but oddly, also hope and rebirth. While unquestionably malign, each of the Chaos Gods has qualities that could be considered noble. Khorne, for example, prefers challenging battle over trampling the weak. Tzeentch extols the pursuit of knowledge. In this regard, Nurgle is a god of decay, yes, but he also understands the cyclical nature of life, that life eventually leads to death, but that the seeds of that death create new life, very literally and immediately in the case of pestilence and disease. And he enjoys the hope and determination of mortals to overcome such obstacles in their path. That being said, he does still consider his many diseases and the suffering he spreads to be gifts, so don't let his cheery demeanor fool you. Nice is not necessarily good. Nurgle most commonly manifests in the form of a massive, green-skinned, bloated creature with pustules and sores and all manner of evidence of horrible wasting diseases covering his corpulent form. Additionally, from many of these orifices weep demons, as well as the things you'd generally expect. Truly a disgusting creature.
Equally disgusting, though in an entirely different manner, we have Slaanesh. Slaanesh is the god of pleasure, decadence, and excess. He feeds upon passion, desire, and excess. Despite the phrasing here, he feeds on these concepts in all of their forms. From the obvious sensual connotations, to everything from lusting for power to obsession with your work and more. Slaanesh is the youngest of the Chaos Gods, with the other three taking form well before the 10th millennium, while Slaanesh wasn't born until the 30th millennium. Slaanesh, in simplest terms, thrives on and encourages excess in all things, encouraging overindulgence in whatever his followers do. Slaanesh also has a notable connection with the Eldari, oversimplification but basically space elves, as he was formed almost entirely because of them. At the height of their power, the Eldari as a culture turned to incredible excess and decadence in literally everything. Whatever you're thinking of right now listening to this, they indulged, excessed, and obsessed in that and everything else conceivable, giving birth to Slaanesh, who, upon his creation, promptly devoured the vast majority of the Eldari species, including most of the other gods formed from the Eldari's actions in previous millennia. Even in the modern day, he devours every fallen Eldari soul that isn't properly protected. He doesn't ignore the other factions, though, encouraging hedonism and decadence in all peoples the galaxy over, and even using and possibly feeding off of the obsession that each of the other Chaos Gods possesses by the very nature of their existences. When manifested, Slaanesh assumes the perfect, most beautiful and appealing form according to whoever is meeting him. Human, Eldari, male, female, etc.
And that is basically the Chaos Gods. Giant crapstorm of horribleness from the Warhammer 40k franchise. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Nate Dogg, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.